Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold glass of the spaceship window, watching his home planet get bigger and bigger. Earth looked so peaceful from up here, with its blue oceans and white clouds swirling around like cotton candy. But Jake knew something the aliens didn't know yet. Earth was anything but peaceful. The alien ship called Harmony was supposed to be a friendly meeting place, but Jake could feel the tension in the air. The aliens had been studying Earth for months now, and whatever they found had really spooked them. Jake had heard whispers from the crew that some aliens were already talking about turning their ships around and never coming back. Ambassador Veltara was the leader of the alien group. She looked like a tall, thin person, but with purple skin and 4 arms instead of 2. Right now, all 4 of her hands were shaking as she held a glowing tablet. Her big black eyes kept darting between the screen and the human sitting across from her. Class 12, she kept muttering in her strange, musical voice. Impossible. Nothing lives on a Class 12. Her assistant, a smaller creature that looked like a walking mushroom, leaned closer. Are you sure the readings are correct, Ambassador? I've checked them 50 times, Veltara replied, her voice getting higher with each word. This planet shouldn't have any life at all. But somehow, these humans not only live there, they are building spaceships and reaching out to the stars. Dr. Rebecca Johnson, Earth's top scientist, noticed how nervous the aliens were getting. She nudged her partner, Lieutenant Tom Bradley, with her elbow. Tom was a big, friendly guy from Texas who always stayed calm no matter what happened. He just smiled and went back to reading his paperwork about Earth's geography. What's got them so worked up? Rebecca whispered. Tom glanced over the aliens, who were now huddled together like scared children. Beats me. Maybe they don't like our cooking. But the aliens weren't worried about human food. They were terrified of human homes. For 6 months, their best scientists had been studying Earth through powerful telescopes and space probes. What they found broke every rule they thought they knew about life in the universe. The alien computers had given Earth the worst possible rating, a Class 12 death world. In their language, that meant a planet so dangerous that nothing should be able to live there for more than a few minutes. Most planets with intelligent life were Class 1 or 2, nice and safe with gentle weather and friendly animals. But Earth? Earth was a nightmare planet where everything tried to kill everything else. The aliens had watched in horror as they discovered massive creatures called dinosaurs that once ruled the planet with teeth as long as their spaceships. They saw volcanoes that could explode with the power of 1,000 nuclear bombs, covering entire continents in burning rock and ash. They found evidence of ice ages that froze the whole planet solid for thousands of years. Even worse were the smaller creatures. Tiny invisible things called bacteria and viruses that could kill millions of humans in just a few years. Spiders with poison that could melt flesh. Snakes that could squeeze a human to death. Plants that could burn skin with just a touch. And the weather. Oh, the weather was the stuff of alien nightmares. Storms with winds so strong they could pick up houses and throw them around like toys. Lightning bolts with enough electricity to power entire cities. Hurricanes bigger than some of their home planets. But what really scared the aliens was that humans didn't just survive all this, they seemed to enjoy it. Their probes had detected something called extreme sports, where humans would jump off mountains with nothing but a piece of cloth to keep them from dying. They found records of humans climbing the tallest, most dangerous peaks just for fun. Some humans even went swimming with sharks, the ocean's perfect killing machines. How are they still alive? Asked the mushroom assistant. Veltara stared at the data one more time. Every number, every measurement told the same impossible story. Earth was the most dangerous planet ever discovered, and somehow the humans living there had not only survived but created art, music, literature, and science. They had built cities, formed governments, and reached into space. Maybe, Veltara said quietly, we made a terrible mistake coming here. Commander Kethral had spent his entire career breaking minds. He was the alien military's top expert at psychological warfare, the guy they called when they needed to make enemy soldiers surrender without firing a single shot. His job was to find what scared people the most and then make those fears come alive in their heads. Today was going to be his masterpiece. He had studied human culture for weeks, digging through their entertainment, their history, their deepest mythologies. He thought he understood what would terrify these strange creatures from the death world called Earth. The conference room was dark and cold, designed to make visitors feel small and helpless. Kethral stood at the front like a teacher about to give the most important lesson of his life. His 6 eyes glowed red in the darkness, and his metal claws clicked against the control panel as he prepared his weapon. "Today," he announced in his deep, echoing voice, "you will understand why the galaxy fears the power of the Galactic Council." The human delegation sat calmly in their chairs. Jack Wilson, a friendly diplomat from London with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes, was sipping coffee from a paper cup. Next to him, Katie Phillips from New York was checking her phone, probably reading messages from her kids back home. Lieutenant Danny Murphy from Ireland was actually taking notes, like this was just another boring meeting. Kethral raised his claws dramatically. "Behold your worst nightmares." The room filled with holographic horror. Massive tentacled creatures writhed in the air above the humans, their bodies shifting between dimensions so your eyes couldn't quite focus on them. These weren't just pictures. They were psychic projections designed to reach directly into your brain and trigger your deepest fears of the unknown. The creatures had faces that weren't quite faces, with too many eyes in the wrong places and mouths that opened into endless darkness. They made sounds that weren't quite sounds, vibrations that bypassed your ears and went straight to the fear center of your brain. Just looking at them was supposed to drive you insane with terror. Ancient alien civilizations had taken one look at these visions and immediately surrendered. Entire planets had gone mad from exposure to these psychological weapons. Hardened space marines had curled up in corners and refused to fight after seeing what Kethral was showing the humans right now. But Jack Wilson just tilted his head to one side, like he was trying to remember something. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "this reminds me of that old horror writer. What was his name? The fellow who wrote about the octopus monsters." Katie looked up from her phone. "Oh, you mean Lovecraft?" "Yeah, this is just like those Chulhu stories my brother used to read." The tentacled nightmare creature roared silently above them, its reality-bending form designed to shatter human sanity. Katie waved at it like she was greeting a neighbor. "Hi there, big guy. You look just like the monster from that movie we watched last weekend." Lieutenant Murphy stopped taking notes and grinned. "The one with the giant squid thing? My 10-year-old daughter loves those films. She's got toys of monsters just like this one." Kethral's 6 eyes widened in confusion. The humans were supposed to be screaming by now, or at least cowering in fear. Instead, they were chatting about movies and children's toys while his most powerful psychological weapons floated uselessly above their heads. "This is quite good special effects work," Jack continued, reaching up like he wanted to touch the nightmare creature. "How do you get the tentacles to move so realistically? Is it some kind of advanced hologram technology?" Katie nodded enthusiastically. "The sound design is impressive too. Very atmospheric. My nephew would get a kick out of this. He's really into scary movies." The other aliens in the room started whispering frantically to each other. Their translator devices were working overtime, buzzing with confused chatter. How could the humans be discussing cinematography while staring directly at manifestations of cosmic horror? Kethral cranked up the intensity. The creatures became larger, more twisted, more impossible to look at without losing your mind. He added layers of psychic screaming, the kind of mental assault that had once caused an entire enemy fleet to flee in terror. Danny Murphy squinted at the display. "Is that supposed to be scary? Because honestly, it just looks like a big angry jellyfish with too many arms." "Maybe they need better writers," Katie suggested helpfully. "The monsters in our horror stories usually have better motivation. These guys just seem angry for no reason." Jack nodded in agreement. "Good point. What do they want? World domination? To eat people? You need clear stakes for proper dramatic tension." Kethral stared at the humans in complete bewilderment. They weren't just unafraid. They were giving him notes on how to improve his psychological warfare techniques. They were treating his ultimate weapons like a student film project that needed better editing. For the first time in his long career, Commander Kethral had absolutely no idea what to do next. Commander Kethral was starting to panic. His cosmic horror show had completely failed, so he decided to try something even worse. His claws danced across a control panel as he loaded up his most devastating psychological weapons, the big ones that made entire star systems surrender without a fight. The holographic display shifted and showed planets exploding in massive balls of fire. Whole solar systems were getting wiped out, turned into nothing but floating rocks and dust. The images were so realistic you could almost feel the heat from the explosions and hear the screams of billions of people dying at once. Dr. Robert Davis, a professor from Cambridge with wild gray hair and thick glasses, leaned forward in his chair like he was watching a fascinating documentary. He stroked his beard thoughtfully and nodded. "Now, this is interesting," he said. "The heat distribution patterns during planetary destruction. We've actually written papers about this exact scenario." Kethral nearly fell over. This human was supposed to be terrified of watching his entire species get vaporized. Instead, he was talking about it like a science experiment. "Oh yes," Dr. Davis continued, adjusting his glasses. "We call this the gamma-ray burst extinction event theory. My colleague Professor Williams wrote a whole book about it back in 2019. Fascinating stuff, really." The alien commander quickly switched to his next horror, the heat death of the universe. The display showed everything slowly cooling down and dying, stars burning out one by one, until nothing was left but cold, empty darkness forever and ever. It was the ultimate existential nightmare that had driven ancient philosophers on a dozen worlds to madness. Lieutenant Amy Johnson from Boston looked up from her notebook where she'd been doodling. "Oh, entropy. Yeah, we learned about this in high school physics. It's like when your coffee gets cold, but on a universal scale, right?" Admiral Zathek of the Void Fleet, a massive creature that looked like an armored whale with tentacles, leaned over to whisper to his aide. "They are not scared," he hissed. "Look at them. They are taking notes. They are studying our weapons like they are shopping for new ideas." His aide, a nervous little creature that looked like a walking stick bug, nodded frantically. "Say, I think the humans are analyzing our psychological warfare techniques for weaknesses. They've turned our ultimate fear weapons into a learning experience." Kethral was sweating now, which was impressive since his species didn't usually sweat. He threw everything he had at the humans, images of reality itself breaking down, time moving backwards, mathematics stopping working, the very concept of existence becoming meaningless. Dr. Davis just kept nodding and taking notes. "Brilliant. This is exactly like the philosophical discussions we have at the university. The question of whether reality has inherent meaning or if we create meaning ourselves. It's been debated for centuries." Captain Billy Thompson from Texas laughed and slapped his knee. "My philosophy professor would love this stuff. We spent a whole semester talking about this exact thing. Called it existential dread or something fancy like that." The aliens were getting more confused by the minute. These weren't supposed to be intellectual discussions. These were weapons of mass psychological destruction. But the humans were treating them like homework assignments. Then something even worse happened from the aliens' perspective. The humans started sharing their own stories. Lieutenant Jenny Martinez from California smiled cheerfully and said, "You know, this reminds me of that volcano in Yellowstone back home. Scientists say if it erupts, it could pretty much end civilization as we know it. We joke about it all the time." Captain Thompson nodded. "And don't forget about those asteroids. We've got one that comes pretty close every few years. Everyone makes jokes about whether it's finally going to hit us this time." Dr. Davis got excited. "Oh, and the Ice Ages. We've survived several of those. Nearly wiped out our ancestors completely. Took tens of thousands of years, but we made it through." Ambassador Veltara, who had been quiet this whole time, finally spoke up. Her voice was barely a whisper, and all four of her hands were shaking. "Wait, you mean you've already lived through everything we're threatening you with?" Jenny grinned like they were talking about weekend plans. "Well, not everything. We haven't had a gamma-ray burst hit us yet. But our scientists have some pretty cool theories about how we might survive one. Something about underground bunkers and genetic preservation. Pretty neat stuff." Captain Thompson added, "And that supervolcano I mentioned? We've got emergency plans for that too. Might lose a few billion people, but hey, humans are pretty good at bouncing back from disasters." The alien delegation sat in stunned silence. The only sounds in the room were the quiet hums and clicks of their breathing equipment working overtime as they tried to process what they'd just heard. These humans weren't just unafraid of cosmic horror. They'd already survived most of it. They were talking about planetary extinction, events the way normal people talk about bad weather. They had backup plans for the end of the world, and made jokes about asteroids that could kill everyone. Kethral slowly powered down his psychological warfare systems. For the first time in his career, he had absolutely no idea what could possibly scare these creatures. General Mordan was getting desperate. His psychological weapons had failed completely, and now he was ready to pull out the big guns, the stuff that was so classified that even most aliens never got to see it. This was footage of real wars, real conquests, real planets being destroyed with millions of people still living on them. His 3 massive hearts were beating so hard they sounded like war drums in his chest. This was his last chance to make these humans understand that the Galactic Council wasn't playing games. They had wiped out entire civilizations before, and they could do it again. Show them the Kepler-7 recordings, he growled to his assistant, a small blue creature that looked like a nervous hamster. The assistant's hands were shaking as he loaded the files. Sir, are you sure? These recordings are classified at the highest level. If word gets out that we've shown them to outsiders. Just do it. Mordan snapped. These humans need to understand what happens to species that don't cooperate with us. The holographic display flickered to life, showing real footage from the Galactic Council's military archives. This wasn't fake psychological warfare anymore. This was actual video from their conquests over the past 1,000 years. The first scene showed a beautiful blue-green planet covered in forests and oceans. It looked peaceful and happy, like a place where families would go on vacation. Then the Council's warships appeared in the sky like metal storm clouds. The humans leaned forward in their chairs, watching with intense concentration as the alien fleet began its attack. Massive energy beams shot down from space, turning entire cities into glass craters. The planet's surface glowed red-hot as the bombardment continued for hours. Colonel Jake Mitchell, a military strategist from West Point, adjusted his glasses and studied the attack pattern. Interesting approach, he said, like he was watching a chess game. They're using a concentrated orbital strike formation. Pretty effective for maximum destruction. Dr. Lisa Wright, a professor of military history from Yale, was frantically scribbling notes in her notebook. The psychological impact must have been devastating for the population. Seeing their cities destroyed from space with no way to fight back, very demoralizing. General Mordan's jaw dropped open. The humans weren't horrified by watching an entire planet get destroyed. They were analyzing his military tactics like they were studying for a test. The footage continued, showing planet after planet being conquered. Some fought back with primitive weapons. Others tried to surrender, but the result was always the same: total destruction or complete submission. Species that had existed for millions of years were wiped out in a matter of hours. Colonel Mitchell tilted his head thoughtfully. You know, they might get better results if they spread their ships out more. A dispersed formation would give better coverage and make it harder for ground forces to target them. Good point. Dr. Wright nodded, still taking notes. And the timing of the attacks could be more strategic. If they hit during the target species' major cultural celebrations, the psychological damage would be much worse. The alien delegation stared at the humans in complete shock. These people were watching footage of genocide and giving military advice like they were coaching a sports team. General Mordan leaned over to his staff officers, his voice barely a whisper. They're not afraid of us. They're critiquing our war crimes. They are watching us destroy entire civilizations and suggesting ways we could do it better. Captain Tony Rodriguez from Miami was squinting at the screen. That orbital bombardment looks pretty expensive, though. All those energy weapons must use a lot of power. Have you guys considered more cost-effective methods? Lieutenant Ben Cooper from Seattle nodded in agreement. Yeah, and the logistics must be nightmare. Moving all those big ships around, coordinating the attacks. There's got to be a more efficient way to do this. Admiral Zafek felt like he was going to be sick. They think we're amateurs, he whispered to his aide. They're watching our greatest military victories and treating them like student projects that need improvement. Dr. Wright looked up from her notes with genuine curiosity. Have you considered using the target species' own cultural fears against them? Every civilization has unique phobias and taboos. It would be much more effective than this generic shock-and-awe approach. Colonel Mitchell nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. Psychological warfare is all about understanding your enemy's mindset. One-size-fits-all terror doesn't work nearly as well as customized fear campaigns. The humans continued their academic discussion, completely oblivious of the fact that they were talking about improving techniques for destroying entire worlds. They treated it like they were discussing crop rotation or traffic management, just another interesting problem to solve. Captain Billy Murphy from Boston scratched his head. The whole thing seems a bit overcomplicated to me. Back home, we've got much simpler ways to handle disputes. Usually works out better for everyone involved. Lieutenant Amy Davis from Portland agreed. Right? All this planet-destroying business seems like overkill. There's got to be more diplomatic solutions that don't involve, committing genocide. General Mordan's 3 hearts were beating so fast he thought they might explode. Not only were the humans unimpressed by his ultimate weapons, they were casually suggesting that maybe mass murder wasn't the best way to handle interstellar politics. Perhaps, muttered Captain Rodriguez to his colleague, we should have sent our A-team to this meeting. These alien guys seem to need some serious help with their strategy. The alien leadership realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just critiquing their military tactics. They were implying that Earth's military could probably do the job better. Lieutenant Kelly Hayes was the youngest person in the room, fresh out of the academy and still new to diplomatic missions. While her older colleagues were busy discussing military tactics and giving advice about planetary destruction, she was watching the aliens themselves. And what she saw made her heart sink. These weren't proud warriors trying to intimidate humans. These were terrified creatures whose hands were shaking, whose breathing equipment was working overtime, and who kept whispering frantically to each other in their strange languages. She had grown up with 3 older brothers who loved to play pranks, so she knew what real fear looked like versus someone just trying to act tough. The aliens weren't posturing or trying to show off their power. They were genuinely scared out of their minds. Wait, Kelly said, raising her hand like she was in school. The whole room went quiet, and everyone turned to look at her. I think we've got this whole thing backwards. Colonel Mitchell paused in the middle of explaining a better bombing strategy. What do you mean, Lieutenant? Kelly looked around the room at all the confused faces, both human and alien. They are not trying to threaten us, she said slowly. Look at them. Really look at them. They are absolutely terrified of us. The humans turned to stare at the alien delegation, and for the first time, they really saw what Kelly had been noticing. Ambassador Veltara's hands were trembling so badly she could barely hold a datapad. General Mordan's 3 hearts were beating so loudly they sounded like drums. The smaller aliens were huddled together like scared children during a thunderstorm. Oh my God, whispered Dr. Wright, finally understanding. We thought they were showing us their weapons to intimidate us, but they were actually trying to figure out what scares us because they are afraid we might attack them. Captain Rodriguez slapped his forehead. And when we started giving them advice on how to improve their military tactics, they thought we were showing of our own superior knowledge of warfare. The conference room exploded into chaos as both sides finally realized a massive misunderstanding. Humans were talking over each other, trying to explain that they weren't threatening anyone. Aliens were chittering and buzzing in panic, their translator devices working overtime. Ambassador Veltara slowly stood up, all 4 of her arms wrapped around herself like she was giving herself a hug. Her voice was barely a whisper, and she seemed to be choosing each word very carefully. Your species, she began, then stopped and tried again. Your people watch movies about the things that we use to torture prisoners. You turn cosmic horror into bedtime stories for your children. Your planet tries to kill you every day in ways that our military uses as worst-case scenarios for psychological warfare. She paused, looking around the room at all the human faces staring back at her. How are we supposed to live in the same galaxy as creatures who think planetary extinction events are just interesting science problems to solve? Captain Jake Morrison, the friendly diplomat who had started this whole journey, stepped forward with the biggest, most reassuring smile he could manage. He spread his hands out to show he wasn't carrying any weapons, like someone trying to calm down a scared animal. The same way you live with anyone else, he said gently. Look, we're really not as scary as you think we are. Yeah, Earth is a pretty rough place to grow up, but that just means we're good at handling problems when they come up. We're not looking for fights or trying to conquer anyone. Lieutenant Cooper nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. Most of us just want to explore space, meet new people, maybe share some recipes. I brought cookies from my grandmother if anyone wants to try them. Dr. Wright put away her notebook. I'm really sorry we were giving you military advice. We weren't trying to show off or anything. We're just used to analyzing everything we see. It's like a habit. Kelly stepped forward, her young face serious but kind. We had no idea you were scared of us. If we had known, we would have tried to make you feel more comfortable from the beginning. The tension in the room started to ease as both sides realized they had been talking past each other for days. The humans weren't bloodthirsty warriors looking for their next conquest. The aliens weren't trying to intimidate Earth into submission. Everyone had just gotten their wires crossed in the worst possible way. 3 months later, the Galactic Council held a special ceremony to welcome humanity as their newest members. They gave humans the official title of Specialized Peacekeeping Consultants, which sounded impressive but was really just a fancy way of saying the people we call when something really dangerous shows up. The job description was kept deliberately vague, but every species in the galaxy understood what it really meant. If there was ever a threat too scary for the rest of civilized space to handle, some cosmic horror or ancient evil that made everyone else run away screaming, they would call the humans from Earth. After all, these were the people who thought tentacle monsters were cute, who made joke about planetary extinction, and who gave helpful advice on improving genocide techniques. If something was too dangerous for them to handle, then it was probably too dangerous for the universe to exist. The galaxy had suddenly become a much more peaceful place, mostly because nobody wanted to find out what the Deathworlders actually considered scary.